Allen Company, 47 years young and a proud sponsor, wishes OOIDA all the best as you celebrate 50 years.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
In the late 1980s, truckers staged a boycott of the state of Indiana, and that boycott ended in real results. As part of our ongoing series on OOIDA's 50th anniversary, we'll take a look back at what happened and why with someone who was there, OOIDA President and CEO Todd Spencer. Also on today's program, the Landline magazine staff breaks down the biggest news of the week, including the proposed automatic emergency braking mandate, the possibility of hair testing, and FMCSA's desire to target unsafe motor carriers. But first, the news with Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Mark. A letter has been sent to President Biden and the U.S. Senate from the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association asking once again that Julie Su's nomination for Labor Secretary be withdrawn. George O'Connor is Director of Communications for OOIDA. He says OOIDA and other groups representing independent contractors have made their collective position clear, which is that Su is unqualified to lead the Department of Labor due to her record as Labor Commissioner and Labor Secretary in California.
She had her fingerprints all over AB5, which has been just confusing, devastating to the trucking industry writ large in California, into independent contractors, freelancers in California. So what happened this week in the Senate was there were no absences in the Senate. All Democratic senators were there for a while. Senator Feinstein was out with health issues, and Senator Fetterman was out with health issues. So there was a bit of this waiting game of, well, when the full slate of Democrats are back in the Senate, that will be the optimal time to get Julie Su's confirmation over the line, because she's a very controversial nominee, and they need just about every vote they can get. So they had the full slate this week in the Senate, and her nomination did not come up for confirmation. And it's not on the slate so the Senate just they're in the middle of a 2-week break now to do some work back in their home states over the next 2 weeks, which crosses over the 4th of July holiday as well. And there have been nominees for judicial posts that are slated up for when the Senate comes back. So what we're looking at now is Julie Su was not up for confirmation this past week when they had the full slate of senators, and she's not up when they get back. So that tells us they don't have the votes, and what we as an organization would prefer is a new nominee.
O'Connor says the Senate has essentially spoken by not voting. He says the White House could potentially keep her there in an acting role, but he said the association would prefer that someone dealing with the Department of Labor be permanent. Traffic is flowing once again on I-95 in Philadelphia. Today, the temporary lanes opened up less than 2 weeks after a deadly collapse. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro made the announcement this morning.
First and foremost, I want to thank our brave first responders who put out the fire in those initial hours. After that, we demolished a roadway. We rebuilt I-95 in just 12 days, and through that process, we showed the nation what Philadelphia and Pennsylvania are all about. And so I'm proud to be here this morning together with my colleagues to announce that this stretch of I-95 will reopen at noon.
PennDOT Secretary Mike Carroll spoke about the next steps on getting the permanent structure rebuilt, but no timeline was given.
And while we do that, PennDOT and our team and the Buckley team will continue our efforts to construct the facility on either side of this structure in an effort to restore 95 to its full capacity in the very near future.
During questions, reporters asked about the safety of the structure.
The Department of Transportation has a lab that tests all the materials. Every bit of material used to construct this facility has been rigorously tested and used in multiple applications for many years in Pennsylvania and across the nation from Maine to Arizona. So all of the standards, the highest standards that exist for our structures across the state, are employed with this facility as well.
On July 11th, a gasoline tanker carrying more than 8,000 gallons of fuel tipped over while the driver was negotiating a ramp curve. The truck caught fire under an overpass. The fire caused a section of the northbound lanes to cave in and also damaged the southbound lanes. The truck driver was 53-year-old Nathan Moody. He died in the incident. President Biden recently vetoed legislation that would have overturned an aggressive EPA regulation on heavy-duty vehicle emissions. To explain, Landline Magazine's senior editor Mark Schremer joins me. Mark, can you explain what the resolution would have done had it not been vetoed?
Yeah, so I guess to start with, the restriction is going to start with model year 2027 trucks, and it is the most stringent EPA regulations on heavy-duty trucks that have come across thus far, and this would have ended it. The Senate and in the House passed this resolution by narrow, slim margins. Then, as expected, President Biden promised that he would veto these resolutions. He did, keeping his promise. I believe it was only the fourth veto of his presidency. And then they attempted the override. You need 2/3 majority for an override, and it was 54 and 50 votes against. So, of course, obviously that they did not get the override.
And that, unfortunately wasn't that surprising, right?
No, not at all. It's like I said, it was expected the veto was going to come. And in addition, it was clear, they had enough votes to get the resolution passed initially, but they didn't have the 2/3. But, OOIDA is adamantly opposed to this as well, and, was for the resolution. And it does send a message that, there isn't overwhelming support for this. They didn't get 2/3, but at the same time, the majority of the lawmakers were against this regulation.
A bill to update how Michigan observes the 85th percentile speed rule will advance after a 10-1 vote by the House Transportation, Mobility, and Infrastructure Committee. The rule is the speed at or below 85% of vehicles travel in free-flowing traffic. Specifically, this bill would give the state flexibility to round down the 85th percentile speed when necessary. The legislation would also remove the requirement of an engineering and safety study to be conducted to alter a speed limit. Instead, a modified speed limit could be determined in accordance with traffic engineering practices that provide an objective analysis of characteristics of the highway. The bill can now be considered by the full House. And finally, 2 men in Nova Scotia, Canada, unofficially broke a Guinness World Record by golfing 306 holes in 12 hours. UPI reports 2 men attempted to break the world record this week to raise money for a local hospital foundation. The events manager at the golf club where they played said they started at the crack of dawn and their pace was amazing. They didn't stop for 2 seconds. The original record was 290 holes in 12 hours. Evidence must still be reviewed by Guinness World Records before the record becomes official. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. You can write and post a review of the doctor who performed your DOT physical to be shared with other truckers, or look up other reviews of a doctor through the OOIDA website, OOIDA.com. Just go to the main menu at the upper left corner of the page, and under Resources, click on Certified Medical Examiner Review. Do you have a news tip or maybe a comment about something you heard on the air? Email us at landlinenow@OOIDA.com. Next, the Landline Magazine staff breaks down the biggest news of the week, and I'll get the story of the Indiana boycott from Todd Spencer. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. More miles for every tire dollar, and more confidence in your fleet. At Firestone, we help fleets save with dependable value. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
Every make, every model, in every corner of the country. Technical smarts and quality parts. That's how we roll. Bring your rig into TA Truck Service.
Landline Now, thanks for sticking around. I'm Jamie Jones, managing editor of Landline Magazine, and it's time to talk about the hottest news of the week. And with me in studio is senior editor Mark Schremer and staff writer Ryan Wachowski. How we doing, guys?
I'm fantastic.
I'm a little less than that, but I'm doing okay.
I mean, I've spent the morning now reading through a bunch of legal briefs, so I'm
riveting stuff.
I'm just ready for a break. I mean, being away from my desk is the best thing I can imagine right now.
Well, it has been a busy week, and I think we need to start off with the big news that came out on Thursday. Mark?
Yeah. So the U.S. Department of Transportation, basically, it is a joint proposal from FMCSA and NHTSA that would require automatic emergency braking systems on all Class 7 and Class 8 heavy vehicles within 3 years. It would also include the requirements on Class 3 through 6 vehicles within 4 years. So, this is just at the proposal stage, but, this is something we've talked about for a while that they were looking at. If you remember the infrastructure law in 2021, it required them to look into this. It didn't require them to make a mandate, but it did require them to take a look at the standards and whether they needed to be changed. And a proposal that announced Thursday, they're looking to move forward.
And to me, the timing about moving forward with this proposal at this point in time is very, very suspect.
100%.
I mean, the technology is already under investigation by the Department of Transportation.
Yeah, just within weeks of this coming out, NHTSA launched an investigation into a probe that covers 24,000, I believe, Western Star, Daimler trucks that are having false braking issues. And, I think a day or two after they launched the investigation, they had announced a mandate or proposal for light duty vehicles, and now just a couple weeks after that, they're moving forward with heavy vehicles. It, like you said, it is very peculiar timing. It does feel like they're not paying attention to the things that are going on around them, the things they're learning. They just had a plan that this is what we're going to do, and they're not letting those type of things bother them or deter them right now.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier, I mean, this automatic emergency braking. So the whole point of this system is if you get cut off or the vehicle in front of you, has an incident, brakes hard, whatever, that your vehicle will start braking before you have a chance to react to the situation. That's basically how this is going to work, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we've got this technology, and I'm using that loosely because it's obviously under investigation. It's being questioned.
There were air quotes there for those who couldn't see those happening.
For who couldn't see. Exactly. What that's going to look like with the phased-in rollout of this with new vehicles only.
Yeah.
So there's no retrofit. And then you turn around and you've got this group in this many years, this group in this many years, this group in this many years. I mean, can you imagine the carnage on the highways?
Yeah, and Jamie and I were talking about this before we got on air, and they showed a demonstration video as a part of this announcement, and these things are always really convenient. So basically, what it shows is that going down a highway, there is a car that stops suddenly for we don't really know why, but just stopped suddenly, and the truck following behind, because of this technology, is able to stop and avoid a crash. Great, right?
Looks good on a closed track.
Yeah, looks fantastic. But the problem is there is no vehicle behind that truck, which, the likelihood of that, often there's going to be a vehicle behind. And because of the way that they're proposing to roll this out and be newly manufactured and phase in the cars over 3 years, phase in the heavy-duty vehicles from 3 to 5 years, and, all the other cars that, whatever vehicle you drive right now that doesn't have it won't have to have it. So the truck stops in time, great. But we don't know. There might be a car going 85 right behind it.
I just keep imagining an on-ramp where the car gets out on the on-ramp, slows down in front of the truck brakes, the other car's going 90 to nothing to get off the on-ramp. It's going to be a mess. So,
well, and Mark brought up a little bit of the, kind of tunnel vision aspect of it too, right? Like ignoring some of the things. It was just also kind of curious that there was like a big announcement, like a big press conference announcement to do that. And it's not typically what you see from those two agencies. So it just kind of, again, speaks to the, hey, we want to get this done. Here's our thing. And we're going to make a big deal about it.
Yeah. And so this is a proposal. So this is the opportunity in the rulemaking process for comments. We have information about all of that on landline.media.
Yeah, this will actually go. So they made the announcement before. So the actual notice will go in the Federal Register. They say probably they're hoping before July 4th. So it'll be the next couple of weeks. After that, there'll be a 60-day comment period, and that is the time to get those comments in.
Be locked and loaded.
Check back to landline.media. We will have, the doc numbers and everything you need to know to be able to file comments.
We had another pretty big announcement recently, Brian, and this involves hair testing.
That's right. This one.
Do we need to hair test the DOT right now in their previous?
It's a
proposal?
possibility,
Okay.
but so this is a little more of a gazing into that crystal ball. This according to the 2023 spring agenda, the regulatory agenda, something expected to come down the pike: a supplemental notice of proposed rulemaking regarding the inclusion of hair testing for programs for the DOT's federal programs, and so those are expected to be filed at least according to the agenda by the end of this month. Jay Grimes, OOIDA's federal affairs, he's the director of federal affairs with OOIDA. He said, those timelines rarely are hit. Expects it sometime this summer. But again, it was one of those things that was proposed back in 2020. It's been kind of hanging out there. Obviously, the comment period was open for a couple of months, received a lot of feedback. And initially that feedback was, what type of technical hurdles do we need to clear? And they got a ton of feedback from the industry. OOIDA is one of them, obviously opposing mandatory hair testing. But now, rather than moving forward as a final rule, they're coming back and saying, hey, we're going to extend this comment period. We're going to remodify the original proposal. So we'll see all that. Again, there's no real way of knowing until we get that posted as to what that will contain. But you can expect OOIDA to likely file comments opposed to that as well.
And you brought up a really good point there, because we kind of have a tendency to talk a little insider baseball sometimes when we talk about this regulatory process. So we had a notice of proposed rulemaking, and that's where it's kind of the tire kicking phase of buying a car, if you will. They just float some ideas out there, see what the reaction is. And if it's positive or they flat don't care, if they want to go on and just go ahead and make a mandate, they could move to a final rule following that. So in this case, we had the proposed notice of rulemaking, and the comments received gave the agency enough pause to have to go back and go, okay, this wasn't ready for prime time, so how do you feel about this? That's the stage we'll be at again.
Sure, and the original proposal obviously was looking for technical issues, scientific issues that might arise because of hair testing. OOIDA, pointing out a number of those concerns, questioning the reliability due to contamination from the environment and different things around that, as well as the cosmetic treatment of hair sometimes can cause different things to show up for different periods of time. And so there's
even ethnic biases with different types of hair.
100%. And also, and in the proposal, there's obviously verbiage for folks who wouldn't be able to provide hair samples, be it, they don't have enough hair to provide, or they have a religious exemption that would, say, hey, I'm not going to provide the sample. So there is verbiage that's built in for other tests that serve as essentially a backup in those instances. But overall, I think that right now the consensus, at least among the opposition, is that there's just not enough scientific evidence to show this to be as reliable as the current methods that we have.
And the science is going to have to be there before they can proceed.
And oh, by the way, this is also coming on the heels of the DOT announcing that they're adding oral fluid collection as a method as well. So now you have that going on. Now, currently, they're in the process of certifying laboratories. Like, they made the rule before they actually had the lab certified, so nobody can actually do it until they get there. So while they get that process ironed out.
But they're going to do it.
Yeah, they're getting there. But while they get that process ironed out, they're also going to come back to you and say, hey, what do you think about hair testing?
There you go. unsafe motor carriers. We spend a lot of time on this show in our print product, everything focusing on how safe truck drivers are.
Sure.
Because, they want to get home safe to their families just like everybody else. But the reality is there are those motor carriers out there that do not hold safety in high regard, be it for equipment or whatever. FMCSA, came out with an announcement about targeting those unsafe motor carriers.
Yeah, and this is one of those, you mentioned like the tire kicking stage. This is real early in the process, and it's an interesting one from the standpoint that it has been something that FMCSA said that they're planning on doing for a while, and it keeps on being kicked back. I think it was originally supposed to come out in January, and then it got then the next agenda said March, and now it's saying later this summer. But basically what it is, it'll be, in using that inside baseball terminology again, this is an advance notice of proposed rulemaking. So this is even before they would have a proposal.
We're talking about maybe buying a car.
Exactly. We're just browsing. but so they're looking at it. Basically, when this comes out, they want to know, like, what are the things that they can do that, to help identify unsafe motor carriers and get them off of the highway. So this will be a chance for trucking companies, truck drivers, to provide the feedback. We don't actually have the notice yet to see exactly what it's going to say, but we do know that they're looking at inspection data and just different ways to determine carrier fitness, as they call it, and making sure that the motor carriers out there are operating safely as they can.
So what's it going to take to get you in a regulation today?
Oh my God! Our car buying analogy has just jumped the shark with that one.
What's the loan percentage right now? What do we got?
When you talk about those things, and one of the hurdles that I know that FMCSA always faces on these particular things, you really want to see that enforcement. But it does take manpower to go through all this stuff. And sometimes that winds up being the hurdle, and that's where Congress has to get involved and, add additional funding for more enforcement. And sometimes you hear more enforcement and you're like, no. But, that may actually be one of the hurdles we see on this. So we don't have a lot of time, Mark, but we do have one more headline I want to hit on real quick. The UCR fees for next year.
Yeah, they're going down slightly, about 9%. So basically what that means, put it in kind of layman's terms, if you have a fleet of one or two trucks, your fee will go down $37 from what it was in 2023. And if you have 1,001 trucks or more, you'll save
probably not a lot of our listenership here.
Probably not a lot, but they would save $35,836. So
here's that one guy that just got real excited.
How about I put you into that 1,001 fleet today, as we were saying before? So, I mean, you're losing money, not on the savings alone. So.
Yeah. All right. So we've got reduced fees coming up for next year, and we talked about 3 really big rulemakings that aren't happening just yet, but we will keep everybody informed when these hit. Landline Now will be on top of it. We will have those at landline.media as well. Thanks for talking with me today, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Just happy to get away from my desk.
All right. I'm Jamie Jones. We will be back right after the break.
You trust PrePass for more bypasses? Now let PrePass help with tolls. PrePass toll service means lower cost, one invoice for all tolls, and fewer violations. Created by truckers for truckers. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
Landline Now, welcome back. It's time for another of our 50 on 50. 50 significant events from OOIDA's history in celebration of the association's 50th anniversary.
Back in the late 1980s, truckers who traveled in or through Indiana were tired of problems they were having in that state. What resulted was a boycott of Indiana by truckers. Here to discuss the boycott and the role OOIDA played in it is the association's president and CEO, Todd Spencer. Todd, thanks for joining me.
Hey, glad to be part of the show.
Glad to have you here. It's an interesting little piece of history. Let's start with what were the conditions or what was the situation that led to the boycott in the first place?
Gosh, it stretches my memory to go back. We're talking about a long time ago now, but we're talking about a pretty significant event that happened in trucking that involved OOIDA, that involved the state of Indiana, certainly involved truckers overall. And ironically, the things that took place then could very well happen again. That it's kind of like sometimes we're all slow learners, and when it comes to state officials, that's especially so. But what started the boycott was probably one of the most significant things that truckers did, other than the shutdowns in the 70s. The boycott of Indiana basically showed that if drivers could communicate, could stick together, could basically use their economic leverage and influence outcomes. I mean, they could if they chose to, and that was a good example. But it wasn't just simply a matter of one day saying, we're mad, we're going to do this. It was a series of things that led up to where things were, and they're kind of illustrative of some of the backstabbing and things like that can go on. But at any rate, truckers boycotted Indiana. The triggering event was the state lowering the speed limit for trucks, simply for trucks, and simply because in retaliation for a lawsuit that had been filed in the state. It's kind of as I mentioned earlier, alluded to, this is backstabbing stuff. During the 80s, it was common for states to enact taxes targeting truckers, specifically targeting sometimes specific truckers. And, some were called mirror taxes, some were called retaliatory taxes. This may have been simply get even taxes, but OOIDA, as well as other groups, we'd look at those taxes, and if they discriminate against out-of-state truckers, if they were designed to just target those truckers that pass through the state, those shouldn't be permissible under our Constitution. So we went after them in the courts. And ironically, one of the things that really helped give the governor a bad attitude is that these taxes oftentimes in those days were set up with the help of the state trucking association. The state trucking association would be complicit in creating a revenue stream for the state that targeted out-of-state truckers. Stupid stuff, crazy stuff, inappropriate stuff, but they did it. It happened a lot. And in those days, there was another big association that would sue, and assuming they were successful in knocking down one of those state taxes, then what they would do is, in exchange for the state agreeing to settle the matter, agreeing with the state to settle the matter, the big association would agree that they wouldn't oppose whatever makeup measure the state decided to do to recoup the money that they would lose, and in some instances have to refund. OOIDA always said, refund it, and our guys get what they paid, was our position. Anyway, that had the state mad, that had the governor mad, that had the legislature mad. So they lowered the speed limit on trucks, just for trucks. And in addition to increasing fuel tax, increasing their what they call their fuel surcharge, and other registration fees. And a lot of this crap happened during the 80s. But at any rate, because truckers got fired up, in the 80s, when you think about what your communication options were among truckers, really their only real communication option would be, well, it could be telephone if you wanted to stop and find a phone booth and make a phone call. There weren't other phone options. You had the CB radio. And in those days, the nighttime trucking heroes were usually DJs, radio DJs. And the one that was most popular in that area and is much of the greater Midwest was Dale Summers. And he took notice, obviously, out of Cincinnati, Ohio. He knew quite well where Indiana was, where the capital was, who the governor was. And it was a great source of entertainment for he and for his nighttime listeners in those days.
So the boycott started. What form did it take? I mean, was this not taking loads there? Was it just not buying things there? Was it not fueling up there? What shape did it take?
Well, lots of different shapes. Sometimes there were just convoys of trucks that were simply doing the speed limit. And then, as it would be now, if trucks just get together in convoy and do the speed limit, you end up backing traffic up. That was one thing that happened. Others were drivers didn't buy anything. And when I say they didn't buy anything, they didn't buy fuel, they didn't buy food, they didn't buy anything at all. We had during those days, we had truck stops that were open during the daytime, but they'd close at 8 o'clock at night simply because they had no business. They had no business. Nobody was stopping. And when they did, they didn't buy fuel. They didn't buy anything. So truck stop operators knew that this was up. They knew it was serious. They took it seriously. OOIDA, which was then, I was their principal activist back in the day, and once truck stop operators took notice, they had a relationship with state legislatures. The truck stop owners in Indiana had their own state association. It was part of the National Association of Truck Stop Operators. They had their state one. And they knew lawmakers, and they said, hey, come on, lawmakers, let's see if we can resolve this issue, because it's costing us money. It's costing us lots of money.
So what resulted from that? I mean, they were putting pressure on the lawmakers. How did the lawmakers respond?
Well, the truck stop operators helped set up meetings around the state at their truck stop locations during the evening hours when lawmakers would be there. Local lawmakers could be there to listen to what drivers had to say. And I went to 7 or 8 of those meetings myself. I drove to all of them but one. I flew to one that was close to Chicago. But at any rate, and rented a car when I got there. But at any rate, among the first meetings that I went to was in Grovetown, Indiana. I think it's just a Grovetown truck stop. It was on US 30, just off the Indiana toll road. The truck stop operator's name was Charlie Kesmodel. Great guy. Was politically active with the state association. And at that meeting in Grovetown, I met a trucker by the name of Rick Craig. he was a member of OOIDA, and he introduced himself at that meeting. And he took the issue seriously, and Rick attended quite a few of those meetings. He was trucking. He had a run from Anderson, Indiana to El Paso, a regular weekly route. That was his thing. But he was an owner-operator, a member of ours, and he took the issue seriously. And before it was over with, Rick had to actually put a driver on his truck for 3 months, and he took 3 months off to work the state legislature to push these issues with lawmakers. And the issue of putting the speed limit back where it was.
So how did this all get to a resolution eventually?
Well, finally, it went on for, I don't know, about maybe 8 months or so. I mean, it was big. Bozo could keep it going because basically every night he would fire up the troops every night, kind of give them progress reports. Whenever I would leave those truck stop meetings that I would attend, I'd call and let him know what happened, and he would convey the message that, lawmakers were listening. And, then as it is now too, lawmakers will listen if you make the effort to reach out to them. It's always the same. They will listen if, especially your state lawmakers, if you make the effort to reach out to them, they will listen. So do it, guys. Do it. It can be effective. And again, it can be effective. And, sometimes you can have some fun in the process.
Well, how was the boycott eventually resolved? I mean, what was it that finally triggered the end of the boycott?
Well, probably what triggered the end of it more than anything was, at the time, OOIDA was working with a group of, a group that was providing insurance services to our members. Their name was Truck Riders, and they were based in Cincinnati. And we were working with those folks, and they were basically providing the insurance for our folks. And and in the process of doing that, we discovered that these folks that we believed were doing the right thing by our members weren't. They were actually not people that could be trusted, and that they were basically making off with money that wasn't theirs. We created a relationship directly with an insurance company, and when they started asking us about our relationship with these other folks, they realized that they were getting shorted too.
Hold that thought just for a moment, Todd. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about what was happening there in Indiana. Landline Now will be back in just a moment.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine ViberTech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with ViberTech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. I've been talking with OOIDA President and CEO Todd Spencer about the Indiana boycott in the late 1980s. Todd, you were talking about a situation that involved an insurance company, and they actually tried to play a role in the boycott, as I recall.
Well, you never know what twists and turns may be down any particular road if you've not been on it before, and this was a new one for us. So, we were doing with some folks that we believed to be trustworthy. We learned the hard way that they weren't. And at any rate, once we realized that these were scoundrels and that our members would not be well treated and well served by them, then we started pulling back. We pulled back hard. And those folks said, well, you can't, because we're going to just simply keep on right on doing what we're doing with truckers. We'll just create our own organization. So they created what was called I believe they called the North American Professional Truckers Association, NAPTA. And of course, their whole reason was obviously to be able to capitalize on the opportunity that it presented to them for them with truckers. But at any rate, they weren't the good guys. So while this boycott's going on, suddenly they decided that they were going to be representatives with truckers on this boycott. And they didn't reach out to lawmakers to try to make anything better, but they did reach out to truck stop operators. And in the course of reaching out to truck stop operators, what we learned they were doing was simply shaking the truck stop operators down for money to end the boycott. So something that totally unethical, and it wasn't something that we would be any part of. And of course, Bozo would not have had he known what they were up to. He didn't. But we let him know. We let him know as discreetly as we could that these weren't the folks that anybody wanted to be associated with if they hoped to have any credibility with lawmakers or with truckers or anyone else. And for that reason, he was eternally grateful to us for the rest of the days of his life. That's how our relationship really became solid, because we helped him out of a spot where he was going to be, his credibility would have really taken a big hit. But at any rate, by then, the truck stop operators were fully engaged. They were twisting arms with lawmakers, and lawmakers in Indiana were ready to address the speed limit issue. We were pushing for the same speed limit for trucks as there was for cars. And we believed we had lawmakers in total agreement until basically the final end. And as you find out in the final ending, the State Trucking Association was supporting 5 miles per hour slower. The State Trucking Association, totally unbeknownst to us at the time, and when I found out about it, I called them on it, and their representative got mad and stormed out of the meeting with lawmakers. I didn't miss him. And I will not miss anybody that has no credibility. And they didn't on this issue. And to this very day, the state association supports a differential speed limit. And, the sad reality of that is that this is a view that's reflected not by people that drive the truck. The people that parrot that nonsense are those that drive the desks. So anyway, it was time to end the boycott. And of course, certainly truck stop operators had done their part. Truckers had done their part. for that particular day, we had accomplished all we could do. The governor that had so incensed truckers by all of the actions that he did, Governor Robert Orr, he was no longer governor. He'd been replaced by Evan Bayh, and the legislature passed a speed limit bill. And Rick Craig was there at the bill signing ceremony in Indianapolis, and Rick said, "Governor, why don't you put that up to 65? Just write that in." And the governor said, "If it was up to me, I would." But the bill got signed, and basically the rest of it is history. But, the lessons that you walk away from is that, look, folks, people that drive trucks, if you are committed to a cause and your cause is just, and you can raise that cause in the appropriate manner, you can be successful. That's what OOIDA has endeavored to do for now we're in our 50th year. And for us to be successful, it involves you guys, guys and gals. We do it. We've been successful through the years because we've had members that recognize the importance of supporting the bigger cause, the just cause, the right cause, and supporting the organization and each other. Like I said, we're in our 50th year now. We thank all of those members that we've had through the years, those that we have right now, and those we will have as we go on from here. Because believe me, the only thing that's really, really true is that if you want to be treated fairly, then you've got to put yourselves in a position where, they have to do it. That's what OOIDA has been doing for truckers for now on our 50th year, and we thank you.
Do you see that as the lasting legacy, is trucker involvement?
Oh, always. Well, always. Actually, in every aspect of our society, lawmakers get away with the crap they're doing simply because most folks are too busy or too focused on other things to actually just simply be watching, paying attention, providing feedback. Now, that doesn't mean you get incensed because of some dope you hear on the radio or you see on TV, because they may or may not be giving it to you in any kind of reasonable or fair perspective. So look at issues, look at how it affects people, and look at, the broader end goal, end point. Is this someplace that's worth going? And certainly in trucking, we're a big enough and we're a diverse enough industry that you have to look down the road. So, you have to look down the road. Lots of folks say lots of things, but I can't envision a time when we won't need men and women behind the wheel of trucks to operate those trucks. I can't envision a time where we won't need trucks to deliver things. Because, that's what our society's all about. So, and somebody's got to do it. So do the right thing, support the right cause, see the big picture. And
Todd,
thanks.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
I've been talking with OOIDA President and CEO Todd Spencer about the Indiana boycott that occurred in the late 1980s.
That was another of our 50 on 50. 50 significant events from OOIDA's history in celebration of the association's 50th anniversary. We'll bring you a new entry every week from now until the actual anniversary celebration.
And folks, if you do want to get involved, there's a couple of ways you can do it, and one of them is going to the website fightingfortruckers.com. That's our show for today. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
I'm a dad.
A son.
A husband.
Wife.
I'm a writer.
Photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars. Fishing.
My kids.
Chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.